Okay, we're here finally, and I got a special guest, my one and only Hugo. How you doing?
Hey there. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for asking. So I've been meaning to reach out to you because you've always inspired me to be the world's second laziest developer since you're the first. And I got some lazy development, updates to share with you. Like it uses Microsoft Graph API and leverages Azure AD, and it allows me, to say something like message center, and and maybe message center. I guess one more time just to kind of like make it come up on the screen. But essentially, I found a way in which we could take information from our tenant and display that right up there on our screen so that you could bring like a ticker like interface into your meetings. And so Microsoft's cloud keeps changing, and one thing I find is staying up to date. And so for me,
Mhm.
I've I love message center, and I love every way to make it productive for users. I find too often it's buried into admin consoles, and a lot of the information in there helps not only IT pros but also change management and folks in ACM who are trying to promote these changes and communicate them to end users. So, having said that, message center, or hopefully that goes away off the screen. But essentially, I've managed to figure out ways where we could use voice and control some of those elements that display on screen. So
So
close
you're saying,
message center. I'm still trying to see if this thing actually works. Looks like it's taking a tank on me right now. But yeah,
there you go.
more than happy to show and share what this looks like. So if you're
Okay, so
interested,
let me ask you though. So the stuff that was showing up at the top there, that's static text or that's dynamic text?
it is dynamic. So when I pop up the message center ticker, what you will notice is those updates are actually 7 days old. So I have a reoccurring query that basically goes to message center, gets all the updates, filters the data specifically to Microsoft Teams, and searches for updates in the last 7 days. Then I have it save to a file in OneDrive or SharePoint. And then I'm also using a synchronization from my OneDrive client to bring that file down to my PC. Then I use OBS as a text source, and I display that up on my screen. So this is just one possibility in a video based presentation, but you could definitely take this into applications and other concepts as well. And this is one use case of Graph, of course, to make that call.
Okay, and when you're talking about the message center, you're talking about the Microsoft 365 admin center, the message center that's inside of that for
Yes,
updates
yes,
on what's coming up in your tenant.
that's right.
Okay, that's very cool.
So I thought we'll take a little minute, a huge moment here, but we'll take some time and we'll walk folks through how I set this up and how they can download and import this into your own environment and test this out. Now I'm gonna just bring up the screen here. So the sample or the flows that I've created, I've uploaded them to GitHub, and and you'll find in there two zip files which are basically flows that'll help anyone get started in getting this to work. So let me just show you. Now you've seen the ticker up on the screen, but there are other use cases. Would be, well, what does this look like inside of Microsoft Teams? So one way is, I'm just going to bring the Teams client in here. So one way is to create a channel inside Teams and post those messages in there. Now, I'm sure folks have seen the sync to planner, which is yet another way, I guess, to manage these updates. So in my flow, I've removed the creation of these as tasks, but you could always use the Microsoft out of the box sync to planner, or you could use my example and create planners and buckets and so forth. Right.
Cool.
But the real thing here is to see those messages and engage in conversation with folks that, who are on the team, to let them know this is a cool update, right? So this is saving from the emails, of course, and reduces that, and it brings a whole bunch of people on the same page, same story, same update.
So a scenario where you'd use this is if you want to start kind of communicating to your users, this change is coming very soon. Get ready for this, or maybe you've got kind of I'm trying to remember now what that ring is called. The first. Come on.
The releases, the release
First
rings.
release. Yeah, first release. That's it. Where maybe you have some people that need to start, you have a team that needs to start educating their users and start planning training and testing and things like that around first releases.
That's correct.
That's cool.
So,
Okay.
so what we could do, I was thinking in the next little while, I'll walk you through how this was set up and perhaps make it a little bit more informative on the steps for flow and the other things, because there are some prerequisites that you need. For example, you need to be subscribed to Microsoft Office 365, obviously, but you also need to create an Azure AD application, which is what the flow will use. And then we'll talk about creating secrets, or you could even use a certificate so that you can make a secure connection using Graph to pull this data. Then we'll look at the query in the API we use so that you could use this in more than one use case. You could change these to maybe pull up planner updates, exchange updates, other updates that you're specifically watching for, right? And then I have something else to share, which would be I have something that I created previously in Power BI. So if you love visuals and all that stuff, I could show you an example of how that same setup in Azure AD could be then used in Power BI. So you don't need to use Power Automate. With the free license of Power BI Desktop, you could connect to this instance. So you do need an Azure registration. So talk to your global admin about allowing you to create that. And we'll look at the permissions just in a moment. All right. So let's see if I can spice things up. I know dead silence is killing me, and we're streaming this on YouTube, so there's no way for me to kind of play something with this getting stopped. So let's just let me try this one. All right, see how it goes.
Do you want me to just hum some music in the background?
No, I think this is good. Well, if it gets distracting, we'll turn it off. All right.
That's fine.
Okay, so the first thing, what I'd like to do is I want to walk folks through the Azure registration for this, which will help them understand how they can, get started, right? So, of course, I have the instructions up here for others to follow. So essentially, you're going to create an Azure AD app. You're going to give that app some permissions in here. And then finally, you're going to grab some details for it, right? So to get started, I'm going to go to Azure. Now, app registrations in Azure is buried inside Azure Active Directory, right? And inside Azure Active Directory, you will find app registrations. Now, I have created previously some registrations in here that you can see. I've created a few, right? So I'm going to create a brand new one just to go through how to create this. So we're going to call this application name Hugo Messages. I don't know. Do you have a better name? I always struggle with names. Trying to avoid the word test. So you click register. And that's it. That's the simplest thing to do so far. It's just to give it a name and get to this part. But essentially, once you've created an application, a few things have happened. Number one, you get an application ID. So I would invite folks to copy their application ID, right? We need that information. Let me get a quick notepad here, see if I can create a new note for folks to see, right? So let's paste this there. So that is my application ID. So keep that saved for later. You'll need that in Flow, or if you're using Power BI, that's something you'll need. The next thing you'll need in here is your tenant ID. Usually start with tenant ID first because that's really where we're at, and then go from there. Your tenant ID is your directory tenant. You can get it right from here. Yeah, those animations. Okay. So let's bring back that note, sticky note, and let's just paste that over here as well. So I got my tenant and I got my thing. And the last but not least is the secret. So the secret is you'd have to create a new one. Now you can use a certificate. You could get it signed, self-signed, or you could buy it from VeriSign or other providers. But in this case, I'm going to use a secret. I'm going to put no expire, but you should expire your secrets as a good practice. So we'll just say Hugo in here, Hugo password, and expires in 6 months. And I click add. If you've not seen this before, the value and the secret become available the first time, right? And then if you leave the screen, it will no longer be there. So folks,
That's right.
just make sure you get this right. So every time I look at this, my eyes get confused between value and secret ID. I'm just going to stick with the right, which is the ID. Secret ID. All right, so there we go. We got 3 pertinent information that's required to make a connection and be authorized. But authorized for what? Authorized for access to resources. So now we have to define what resources we're going to need. All right, so I'm just going to navigate away from this screen. I'm going to click on API permission. So in the API permission, you can give access 2 ways, application or delegated. Now the difference, I'm sure you know, right? The application would use its own identity to give access to resources on behalf of the user, and delegated just takes your own access and you get back information based on your own identity. In this case, I can't use my own identity because this is not how the permissions can be granted. It has to be application. So where it's buried inside here under the Office Management APIs. Now I do think they're moving these things around, so let's take a look in here. I'm going to click on application, and the quick thing you can do in here is check this box called Service Health Read. Service Health Read gives you access to 2 things, not only Message Center, but also the incidents. Also the so you could use this and maybe pull up the latest incident in the last 7 days, right? So I'm going to add a permission. Now by default, once you do this, you have to grant the permissions as well. So as you can see, there's your editing permissions. You'll have to do that, and then you'll also get the option here to grant. So I'm going to click grant, and do you wish to grant? And I'm going to say yes. And this means anyone with the secret password identity can use this. Not that it's actually set up. That's all I needed it to do, right? And if I just go one step back to the secret, you'll notice that, oops.
Yeah.
The value has gone. I'm going to do that secret one more time because I think it's probably the value and not the secret ID now. So usually it's the part that gets grayed out.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is the value.
Or yes. So let's go ahead.
And I've done this, like I pretty much do this every single time. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you generating another secret. The one thing that I would say though is if you're not using the secret because you lost the value of it, you might want to get rid of the previous secret. But you don't need to do that for your demo, obviously. But in real life, don't leave just secrets unattended like that.
I'm just gonna do the good thing. All right. Okay, so here we go. We deleted it, so it's gone.
Awesome.
All right, so I've captured the pertinent information that's required, and the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go to flow. Now, I should say Power Automate, but been using this for a while. The URL does say flow.microsoft.com. And before I open up one of these flows, I'm just going to go to a new instance of Power Automate, which takes us to the landing page of where we are. Perfect. Okay, so this is the typical landing screen, right? And what do we do here? Let's see. We want to create a flow. And I believe in the create screen, there is the option to also import a flow. So let's take a look and see where that is. So if you remember, where do we move the import? I think it's sometimes up there, but I always muscle memory my way into create. I always hope to see it here. But I
No.
guess you could go to My Flows and click import.
Import. Yep.
Okay. I'll wait one day, or you can let them know where I'm looking. So I'm going to click on import. And this allows you to import pre-configured flows in your own environment. And it could be used as a way to promote flows between environments as well. So the packages are available on the GitHub
GitHub.
website. I'll get that right someday. And so what I'm going to do is there are 2 zip files in here that you can download. One is to a text file, and the other one is to your Teams channel. Now, to a Teams channel, you'll need a webhook URL. For today, I think we'll just go through the text example, and then folks can try out the other one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to click on this link. It's basically here. I'm going to hit download, and I believe the zip package is right here. By default, all Microsoft downloads sit in your downloads directory. Mine's gone to my OneDrive here. In here. So let me minimize this because that's where the file is going to be. I'm going to go back to Microsoft Flow, Power Automate, and that's that upload. So once you click upload, you browse to this download. See if I found it here. That's it. Double click and starts the import. Now, a few things. The next screen is pretty important because I think the option that drops down there sometimes could be different for folks. So when you're importing a flow, you have an option to update it or create a new one. So if you already have an existing flow, you want to update it, fine. But since this is going to be new, you want to choose the create options below. So in this case, it's detected this as create as new, but just to show there is also the update as well.
Yeah.
Right. And it's asking me for a resource name. Typically, it just grabs the name of the package, but you're free to name the resource as you like. I'm going to hit save on that. That's good. The next one is going to be interesting. So because I'm using premium connectors and I'm using, so some of these connections you'll need to create. If you have a problem with it, you might have to just click on connectors and create a connection. But in this case, I'm just going to walk through how I've done it here. So in here, I already have a connection, which is why it's listed there. But for folks, you might want to click create new, and that will create the connection right there. You need that going in order for the import to start. So I'm going to select the existing one. I'm going to click save. All right. So what's going to happen is it's going to create a new flow, and it's going to be using this connection that I have to SharePoint in my own environment. And the name option, I think you had that while you were importing. So we should see this import in just a second. So the name, I believe, Hugo, will be here, right? This is the name of the flow.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, just to kind of change things up, I'm going to call this Hugo at the end, right? So keep things.
I mean, that's what I do in all my environments. I name everything Hugo.
Yes.
All my variable names, all my flows. Yeah. Awesome.
I'm gonna hit that import right there.
Yeah.
See where we're at. Okay.
Awesome. Okay. So far you created the flow or you imported the flow, but I mean, you could have created it from scratch if you wanted to replicate all the steps. I'm the world's laziest developer, so I'm definitely not going to do that. I'm just going to import your flow. But you haven't shown us yet how you're using the app ID. I suspect you're using that as a connection inside the flow to go get the API. Is that correct?
That's correct. So when it come back to that copy of tenant ID, secret, and app ID, because we're going to need that information now. It looks like the flow is completed. So the one thing I'll notice is once it's created, it stays at this page. You have to click open flow to find it. So when you click it, a new tab opens, and that allows you to go back just to double check how things went, and you can come back to the new flow. So as you can see, we're on the new flow already, and it says Hugo flow, and that gives me the go ahead, that I've got the right one. I'm going to just walk through this flow. I'm sure it could be done 100 times better. And this has just been my adventure in learning. So just sharing how I did that. So in this case, this flow is not on demand. You can change this trigger. I recently learned that even if I delete this trigger, I can create a new trigger on top of it. So feel free to change this trigger to your own needs. Right? So, all right. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to say is every hour I tell my flow, go get me the time from a week ago. I'm using this because later you'll see when I make a query, I am able to pass a date until. Otherwise, it's going to search all of Message Center for 365 days or all of it, taking a longer call than I want it to be.
Yeah.
All right. So there's nothing to do with the initializations in here in this flow. You really have to focus on tenant ID, client ID, and secret. So in here, you need to enter some values. Now I've put in some values that can help folks just get started, right? But essentially you need to overwrite these values with items in your tenant. So let's just go in here, open up this, take the application ID, copy that, going in a different order than the flow. So this I have called the client ID. I'm going to paste that right there.
Yep.
Right. The next thing I want to do is go back in here, take the tenant ID. I copy that. Okay. I'm going to paste that right in here as well. Okay. Backspace so there's no spaces in there. And the last but not least is the secret. And the secret's right down here. And this was when I realized that the value versus that. So it's got to be the value. Just make sure you copy the value. Secret, Control A, V. Awesome. So now that we've basically put in the core part of this, you're good to go, but you still need to do things. Remember, this flow is going to create a text file. So you have to point in your environment where that file is going to be. During the import, there was an option to use an existing connection. That was my connection to SharePoint. So depending on you guys, you'd have to create your connection to SharePoint. If you didn't, this screen right here will say create a connection, I believe. Right? So it's looking at sites in my teams, right? And in here, because you're using my template, you'll see my links in there, which won't work for you. So please update this and drop this down to the teams or OneDrive or SharePoint sites that you have access to. So I'm going to stick with my defaults, but I'm going to change this name. I'm going to add in here Hugo. Okay. Now there's something I noticed with creating files and updating files. You need a little bit of logic. Sometimes I'm noticing the flow will not create a file if the file is already existing, and there's nothing in here that says override file if it exists. So what I do is if it fails this, then only on fail it will update the file. So that's the way I went around it. But I'm sure you guys can do a check if a file exists, and then you can create a file, right? If it doesn't exist, you can update one. Maybe another better
or
condition.
You could just create a blank file to start with and then assume that every update or everything is going to be an update from that point on.
Yeah. But I assume that folks maybe trying this might have not created one, and just give them that flexibility. So the next thing is at the bottom is because you did that up there, it's also going to do it down here. Now the file doesn't exist, so of course it might have an issue with updating it. That's the one thing I could say. So kind of helps to kind of come back here and update that. So I'll leave the bottom one for now, but really the file name should be here, would be the same file name you'll be updating later. All right, it's gonna hit save on this. Okay, and now we're gonna give it a test. Now, sometimes you can expect an issue, and hopefully if we do, we can just quickly take a look at the flow, because the flow is so good to tell you where it fails and where it passes, right? So first thing you'll notice is the flow is disabled. And that's because when you import a flow, by default, it is turned off.
It assumes it's evil to start with. Yep.
And a flow checker will say, hey, this flow's off, right? So, okay, let's turn it on. And so the turn on is right there. So now we got a flow turned on. It has no runs in there. And so we could wait an hour, but we don't have all that time. So another way is the beautiful test flow.
Yep.
Like the test flow, you can go automatic with a recent use trigger or not, right? So I'm just going to use one. Looks like the flow fired, right? Because I think we see a trigger, and it also succeeded. which gives us some insights that it was working. So let's take a look at this.
So now initialize a message-centered text. The next step there, you're creating a blank string variable that's going to contain the message that you want to spit out at the end. Is that correct?
Happy you noticed that, and I didn't actually explain. Yes, my learnings, for example, the ticker.
Mm-hmm.
For a ticker to be continuous, it's literally one line of text.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need multiple lines in a notepad or in a text file. So I see that the object coming back is an array, and I want to break this array to a non-delimiter file or something. Otherwise, this would have commas and everything would be a new row. And then doing the ticker inside OBS, which perhaps we should show, has some challenges with managing how the tickers work. And I, watched a lot of news and I've seen a lot of tickers, and I personally like the one that scrolls left to right.
Yeah.
Versus the one that comes up and comes up and comes up, which is containing the full text, and then you got about 4 seconds to read it, and then it disappears.
Yeah.
So everyone's got a preference. In this case, good call out. I'm initializing a variable, which will help later on create something. So let's take a look at what happened. It ran successfully, which is great. And it didn't go to the next condition in there, right? And so what I want to bring up is I want to bring up my OneDrive in here. So I am syncing some files from that SharePoint site. And so what I'm choosing to do, I've got to double check if I'm in the right folder. What I'm doing in there is saving the file to a location for, there it is. So here's the Hugo file.
That looks right. Yep.
Right. So that's what came down just now. And it came down to my PC. And if I double click it, what you're going to be seeing is the message center updates in the last 7 days. So this is what it found so far. Updates from the 20th to the 23rd. The latest update is the new side-by-side reporter and presenter modes coming to the desktop. Yeah. All right. So that's kind of cool. That actually came out today. So that's interesting, right? So if this was working and this was flowing into your team channel, your whole team would know this was coming without you having to go check, and things like that. So now that you've noticed this coming here, I want to go back to this flow for just a little bit more because you raised an interesting thing. So I've created something called a scope. And I like scopes in Flow because it allows you to put a whole bunch of actions in one little box. And it also helps with managing flows because it gets pretty long and intense. And so I like collapsing this. So if I open up these things, and we will just go into that, you will see, everything that I've done in here to do this. And so let me walk through that, and then we'll come back and then we'll look at OBS. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Okay, so to do that, I'm going to edit the flow one more time. So while I had everyone just enter these things in, what you could do, Michelle Booman says, Denzel. All right, awesome. That was a little while back. I didn't watch that comment. Hey, Michelle, thanks for watching. So the next thing I'm going to show you is what I've done here is the first call is using the Graph API to make a call. Right now, the API for this, I say Graph, is actually Service Communications API, which is actually a different URL than graph.microsoft.com.
But the same approach could be used for any Graph call.
Yes. A similar approach could be used for Graph. And so in this case, I'm using a premium connector for the get. Everything you had entered at the top is a variable in the get here. So I'm saying, hey, manage.office.api, check this out. Here's my tenant. Here's service communications for messages. Filter me messages that are greater than the past time. In the past time, you can change this to an hour and get updates every hour, right? I just set it to 7 days. So yes, that's the call. And inside of this call, you will see I have passed those variables that were initialized at the top. So that's already there for you. So they're making it easier to perhaps use this again or make another call if you needed to get something else.
And so that's because you use Active Directory OAuth, right?
Yes.
So you need to be authenticated to make these calls. Not everybody can just make these calls.
Yeah, if we go look in the audit logs for who accessed this application right now, it would say this identity, those credentials for my IP address, right? Like you, or it depends who's running it from where, but essentially the identity is coming from here. The next thing is parsing the JSON. So when you make this call, you get back some results, and what you want from the results is a schema of message center. So this schema is available also on the website, but you could generate one from sample, or again, like the flow I've given you has the schema that message center. So a schema, folks, is nothing different than understanding it like a table with columns and column types and the names of those columns. That helps you to filter, sort, and so forth. All right. So we've done that. I'm going to collapse that. That's why scopes are cool. You can open them and you can close them.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right. The next thing is the filtering. So once Message Center comes back with all the messages, what I'm doing is I'm taking the output and putting it in there and saying, find me messages that are Message Center, because there's another type of message, incident. You have incidents that are advisories or incident severity 2. And so I don't want that because they don't have the updates that I'm looking for. So I'm filtering out on Message Center. The next thing I'm doing is within the results set of Message Center for that, let's filter out the effective or affected workload. And so I'm saying here, Microsoft Teams. And so Microsoft puts in your schema which message applies to which technology. You can see that in the admin interface by filtering as well.
So hold on, you're giving me a couple ideas here. Let me just bounce this off of you. So you're filtering right now the message center things, but if I wanted, let's say just for fun, I wanted to create a web part that goes and gets me the status of services, or I wanted to create a PVA virtual agent where I could say, hey, is Exchange down right now, or is SharePoint working okay? You could actually have it call the API and just change the filter here to actually look for, instead of message center, for incidents. That's cool.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. So that's a great use case as well. And so for folks trying that, it is possible to configure this to your organization's needs, and you can tailor this. And the last piece of information was that array you asked me. What am I doing with that? So this, you're good to go till the filter, but when the results came back in my file, it was CSV, it was comma delimited. It was great if you're taking this to Excel or Power BI, but I'm not taking it there. I just want a ticker. I just want a notepad with an update. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a table that only picks certain values from the schema. So I want the MC ID, I want the category where stay informed, plan for change, or prevent or fix issues. And the next thing is I want the title. I don't want the full description. It's a ticker. I don't want to put too much information. So you're free to add in here many more things that are available in Message Center, the feature, display name, action required, etc. The whole thing is available to use from. Now that I've created this array of information, that came into converting a CSV table to string. And so again, you don't have to do this, but I'm doing this for the ticker. So for each message in there, I am basically composing. Format the date time. I wanted it to look a certain way because the times come back in UTC, and for folks in UTC, that's just the full-blown time. I just want to see FRI, Friday, like today, the TGIF. Then I want to see, the ID in the category. And then I want to put pounds to make it look like a ticker. So that's why I'm creating that delimiter in there to be one line. At the end of that journey, it would basically create and store that. It would append it to my variable. Right, and that's how I'm basically doing that. So it does all of that. Last but not least, the join. So while that did all of that and created a file in the format of that, I found out that there's a cool operation called join. What join can do, it could replace every comma that it finds in there with a, I think this is Pipe.
Pipe.
Yeah, put a pipe.
Yeah.
So I put a pipe, and that gives it that delimiter like effect in a straight line. Otherwise, it would have been a comma after every message. So I just did some of that. And then, of course, the finishing touch is they put it in there. You don't even need to do that. You could take the value output out of here, but I just put it in there to final compose. So that way someone could follow that if they had to use it. Take all of that, final compose, and that compose.txt, which was the name of that, goes in there. And that's how we did that. And that's how this flow works and so forth.
That's very cool.
Okay, so now that we got the file there, so the question becomes, how can I make it a ticker on this screen right here? So right now, I'm just sharing the screen, right? So what I'm going to do in just a second, I'm going to come in here and bring in OBS, right? So in OBS, you could right-click, add a new text source. So you'll see text, right? And I'm going to call this message center. Okay. And of course, it's ginormous. And did you know with these things, you could just click read from a file? So that's the trick. I read from a file, I click browse, and now I'm going to go through my OneDrive or my synced files from my SharePoint team site. I'm going to navigate into that folder. I'm going to find Hugo, and I'm going to be able to see that text. And I click OK.
Look at that.
And there is the ticker that you get. Now you got to play with this till you get this right? But if I needed this to scroll, right, it would be right-click, filters, and let me just reduce this because everything's looking too small. Click plus, and there's an option here called scroll. Click OK. Now, the scroll speed will be, I believe, horizontal. I think it goes this way, right? So I think I've done this to about 10. Let's see here, 10. Minimize this here, or is it vertical?
And you probably wanted it to loop. Yeah, no, vertical would be going up and down.
Oh yeah, so you're right. So, it is on the horizontal. The next thing in here is really
and it's
about
looping.
the side.
Yep.
Yes, and it's looping, right? Come in here, it's loop, click close. Now there's one thing in this ticker that I had to get going to make this to work. So I believe this is in, I think it's the filter or the properties of the actual thing. So in here, you would need to use, double check here, custom text. Let me go 600, yeah, and click OK. And so what's happening is it's moving. Just gonna play around with the height. Make this 200 pixels. All right, I think it needs 300 pixels. Right, you click OK.
Looking good, yeah.
Yeah, and you can start to see this thing slowly tick away. Of course, you could play with this a little bit more to get it fine. Get that font down from maybe 28. Click OK. Right now, it's going multiple lines, as you can see. Right, so you've got to be playing around with this just to make sure that you can get it to work in just one way. Right?
But you format it the way you want it, yeah.
Yeah. I had to play around with this for quite a bit to get the effect I wanted. You know, for example, in my screen here, you know, I've had it scroll in and I had a bar. I got the admin picture and I've also got the team's logo in there, right? So it took a little bit of playing with.
Semi-transparent, yeah.
Yeah. So close.
Well, you want
center.
it to be legible, right? Yeah.
Oh, geez. It runs the command, but I don't see it close. Close message center. Oh, here you go. There it is.
Yay.
All right, okay. So finally we saw that in action. But essentially, as you can see, that's how I'm getting the data in there. This could be anything. This could be opening up a web page. This could have been a website that Graph pulled and changed some, Graph pulled and pulled some stuff across. Okay, so that's a short tutorial on that. I got 3 more minutes and I think we're gonna have to cut it off because I gotta jump on a meeting and I'm not sure about you, but I think you have to go too. So I'm gonna close this down. So the few things I wanna go through just to wrap this up. We went through a process to see how you could use Power Automate, import something that we've created or create it yourself or see how we've done this, create an Azure app registration, right? Give it the give that app an API access to service health read. Grab the important details like the app ID, tenant ID, and the password. That's going to get you started. You can take that into Power Automate, right? Now, if you didn't want to take that into Power Automate and do this far, and you wanted to do it in Power BI, I'm happy to share that off my GitHub. You will find a repository where I've created a report that's analyzing Message Center. So so nothing to do. So you don't need to jump in here. You would just open up Power BI, and let me just see if I can actually launch that right now, and I'll show you what this looks like, right?
And your voice command worked.
It did work?
Above you.
It's working. All right, so computer fans going off, a lot of things going on. Typically, Power BI is a beast, so it depends on your resources and power. So let's see if I can get it up here. So I got it up here on the screen, just fighting with my mouse here. All right, here we go. So let's take a look at this.
There you go.
So gonna try and see if I can wrap this up quick. What we got? So Power BI, if you haven't seen this before, this is the editing view of it. I've not published the report. Yes, you can, but I want to get you interested in the data transform. This is going to look at the query. So remember earlier we grabbed those 3 pieces of information. So believe it or not, I didn't realize, and it took me some time to figure this out, you can actually create a query that Flow or Power Automate just did. So I'm actually making a query to get me a token, and I'm then using that to go make calls into here. So I pulled the entire message center into Power BI. So
that's cool.
Yeah, of course you could right click export to a TXT, CSV, or everything, but can see the full. Well, you could do that too and put up an OBS there. But just to kind of like go into the advanced editor for this, I just want to show you basically put in, you would update your tenant ID everywhere in this report. And you would also, let's go in advanced editor, add your password, secret, all in there. Mm-hmm. Once you put this in, you'll be able to query that. So all this does, put those 3 informations in, go to each one of the reports, right? Edit, and enter your tenant ID. I should have put variables there, but I didn't. I was just excited when I got it working. So,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so then what that does is it creates this report, and just to kind of give it more real estate, just so you could see, you could report and trend on how many messages are hitting your tenant for what technology every day of the week or month. I'm just going to type here Teams. And it's going to filter on Teams. I can right click something, drill through message details, and it's going to just show me, whoa, look, graphics, images, everything you saw in Message Center available in here. You can make this a sweet kick-ass Power App. That could be a Message Center and a Power App, and lots of other cool ideas that I can't wait to try or get started on. I did add service health in there now. So the historical information about your health. That's cool. Yeah. Service issues on your tenant, which ones, and historical information over the course of you having your subscription, which services were impacted and not. Right. So that's great insights to show you're operationally sound. How do you get this report? So right on the same link that I had earlier here, there is the Power BI Message Center, and you will find the report there that tells you how to use this and so forth.
So I'm totally planning on stealing this to make a Power Virtual Agent and using the same approach, but when users are complaining and saying, "Oh, I can't access SharePoint, I can't do this, I can't do that," it would actually go use the exact same approach to go look, hey, yeah, I'm sorry, there's currently a problem with SharePoint. SharePoint's down on your tenant, or Exchange messages are being delayed on your tenant right now. So it's not just you, it's the service, right?
Amazing. That's cool. Actually a crazy idea, because that would involve going back into my flows and calling an agent, which is something I've been trying to embrace and see how I could use a flow that uses the bot. or
Yeah.
Flow itself has a flow bot that can alert us what's going on.
Yeah.
Great ideas, Hugo. I knew you're always the one to collaborate with, especially innovations and things like that. Listen, it's been fun. I got to jump quickly and help a few of other folks. Thanks for taking this time with me to go through this exercise. Hopefully, folks see and try and evangelize with this.
Do me a favor.
What's that?
Go get rid of your secret so that nobody just grabs your tenant ID and
Yeah,
username and
sounds
secret.
good. Right after this call, we're deleting that application. But in any case, hopefully others do take advantage and try this out. If you have any issues, drop us a comment here or reach out to Hugo or myself. We're also on LinkedIn, but you can always, hopefully try or messages us and see how we can help you.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm gonna wrap this
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you, Hugo. I'm gonna hit this end thing here, and I'll catch you next week. Have a great weekend yourself, and thanks for taking this moment with me.
Thank you. You too.
All right, so it's gonna take me 10 seconds to find buttons to click, but I'm just gonna click it anyways. See you guys.